Hi there, I'm Travis, and today I want to share something I never thought I'd have to say out loud. My sister, someone I trusted more than anyone, threatened to cut me out of her life if I didn't hand over half of the business I spent years building. It started with a conversation, but it quickly unraveled into something far worse. How does loyalty turn into a weapon? And how do you fight back when family draws the battle lines? Before we dive in, tell me, have you ever trusted someone only to realize they saw you as nothing more than a convenience? Let's talk about it. The rain had been falling all afternoon, drumming softly against the windows of my café. I wiped down the counter with slow, deliberate movements, savoring the quiet pride that came from seeing something I had built from scratch. The warm smell of fresh coffee clung to the air, mixing with the cold dampness sneaking in every time the door opened. I thought about locking up early, giving myself a rare evening off. That's when the phone buzzed against the counter. Darlene's name flashed across the screen. "Swing by the house," the message read. "We need to talk." Something about it didn't sit right. No smiley faces, no teasing insults, just cold instruction. I grabbed my jacket, pulling it tighter around myself, and stepped into the rain. Driving to the old house felt like sinking backward in time. Each streetlight blurred in the downpour, a line of memories stretching out before me. When I pulled up, the house looked smaller somehow, slouched under the weight of the years and water. Darlene met me at the door, her smile strained and brittle. She didn't hug me, didn't even pretend to, just turned and walked inside, expecting me to follow. In the living room, everything was too quiet. The fireplace was cold, the pictures on the mantel dustier than I remembered. Darlene motioned to the couch without looking at me. "Sit." I sat. She didn't waste time. "I want half," she said. Her voice was steady, rehearsed. "Half of the cafe, half of everything." I blinked. "What?" "It's only fair," she said, folding her hands neatly in her lap. "After everything we've been through, it's a family legacy. You wouldn't have built it without me?" I opened my mouth to argue, but nothing came out. It wasn't shock. Not really. Some part of me had always known something like this was coming. Still, hearing it aloud made my stomach knot. When I didn't respond fast enough, Darlene leaned forward, eyes glittering. "If you don't agree," she said softly, "don't bother calling yourself my sister ever again." The words hung in the air like smoke. Not a request, not a negotiation, an ultimatum. I stared at her, seeing not the woman sitting there now, but flashes of the girl she had been, demanding, needing, crying, always louder, always first. I remembered scraping together spare change as a teenager to buy groceries when Darlene blew her paycheck on clothes. Remembered sitting through her endless dramas, her endless rescues. And now she sat before me, erasing it all with a single demand. I stood up slowly. My hands felt too heavy. My voice, when I found it, was barely a whisper. "I need to think." She didn't try to stop me, didn't even look disappointed. As I turned toward the door, she called after me, her voice coated in honey and poison. "Don't forget," she said. "Without me, you'd be nothing." I closed the door behind me without answering. The rain hit me like a wall, soaking through my jacket in seconds. I stumbled to the car, gripping the steering wheel with shaking hands. Through the blurry windshield, Seattle's lights looked like 100 tiny fires, burning quietly in the dark. The rain hadn't stopped. It whispered against the windshield as I sat outside my cafe, letting the night swallow me whole. The world around me blurred into a swirl of taillights and neon signs, but inside the car, it was still, unbearably still. I stared ahead, the steering wheel cold under my palms, thinking about Darlene's words, about the hollow threat still echoing in my chest. "Without me, you'd be nothing." The thought of going home made my skin itch. I needed answers, or at least closure. So when my phone buzzed again, Darlene asking to meet at a diner off the highway, I agreed. Part of me clung to the stupid hope that she would apologize, say she was emotional, that we could somehow fix this. The diner was exactly what you'd expect: cracked vinyl booths, the smell of burnt coffee, a jukebox stuck on a song from 20 years ago. Darlene was already there when I walked in, sitting stiffly by the window, a manila envelope resting beside her like an accusation. She didn't smile when I slid into the booth. She didn't waste time. "I brought the paperwork," she said, tapping the envelope once, twice. I didn't reach for it. I waited. She leaned forward, lowering her voice like we were conspiring. It's only fair, Travis. This place, the cafe, the brand, the success, it's ours. Our family built you. You owe us. The words rolled off her tongue smoothly, rehearsed. She painted herself as a silent partner, the invisible backbone of my achievements, twisting memories into debts I had never agreed to owe. I nodded slowly. And by ours, you mean? 50-50. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Clean, equal, like it should have been from the start. Every cell in my body vibrated with rage, but I kept my voice neutral. You weren't there at the start. You weren't there at the late nights, the second mortgages, the loans I begged for, the nights I cried alone on that cracked cafe floor. Darlene's face hardened. Family is more than showing up. It's blood. It's what matters. Blood over business. That was her anthem now. I leaned back against the booth, the vinyl squeaking under my weight. I thought about all the times I'd covered her debts quietly, made excuses for her failures, kept the shame buried deep because she was my sister. And here she was, framing my survival as a crime against her. Somewhere between her second justification and her third guilt trip, a memory surfaced. A younger me, 15 years old, hunched over 3 jobs while Darlene floated from relationship to relationship, blaming everyone but herself. I remembered the way my stomach gnawed itself from the inside out during days I skipped meals so she could keep her car. I remembered who had built what, and who had simply taken. Darlene pushed the envelope toward me, her nails tapping once more against its surface like a countdown. If you don't make this official by next month, she said, her voice syrupy and sharp, don't bother calling me your sister ever again. I stared at the envelope but didn't touch it. I stood up, sliding out of the booth with a numb grace I didn't know I still had. I tucked the envelope under my arm, not because I agreed, but because I needed evidence. Proof of what we were now. Darlene didn't stop me as I walked out. She just smiled, that cold, satisfied smile that said she thought she'd won. Outside, the rain had picked up, drumming a steady rhythm against the pavement. The neon diner sign flickered above me, casting everything in sickly green light. Family can sometimes be the first enemy. I understood that now in a way I never had before. Morning broke gray and heavy over Seattle, a sky weighed down by clouds that seemed reluctant to move. I unlocked the cafe's front door with stiff fingers, the cold biting through my jacket. Inside, the lights hummed to life one by one, casting long, pale reflections across the polished floors. It should have felt like sanctuary. But the moment I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. The staff stood clustered near the counter, their conversation dying the instant they saw me. Eyes darted away, smiles flickered and died. I hung my coat slowly, pretending not to notice, but the knot in my stomach tightened. It wasn't until Lana, the assistant manager, hesitated near the espresso machine that the whispers finally reached my ears. She only has it because of her sister. Everyone knows it. I froze, the words hitting harder than I expected. My face burned, even though they hadn't said it directly to me. Even though some part of me had already known it was coming. Rumors, sharp, persistent, slithered through the community like ivy, gripping old walls and crumbling them. Darlene had been busy. Friends I had laughed with, neighbors I had waved at from behind the cafe counter, now second-guessed the foundation I had poured myself into building. According to them, I was a thief of dreams, a fraud propped up by the real genius, my sister. I tried at first to silence it. A few clarifying words here, a casual denial there. But gossip doesn't need evidence. It only needs repetition. And Darlene, it seemed, was relentless. Each whisper tightened around my throat. Each sidelong glance knotted itself deeper into my gut. The cafe no longer felt like mine. It felt like a stage where everyone waited for me to stumble. Then the real damage came. A call from Brad, my longest-standing supplier. His voice was tight, cautious. He wasn't sure if he should continue our partnership, he said. There were concerns. When I pressed him, he finally admitted. Darlene had secured a substantial loan from a local bank, using my name, my cafe's reputation, without my knowledge, without my consent. The room spun for a moment. I gripped the counter to steady myself. My personal credit, my professional credibility, all of it dangled over a cliff I hadn't even seen coming. Hours later, I sat alone in the back office, staring at the renewal contracts I couldn't bring myself to sign. The silence was loud. Every tick of the old clock on the wall was a taunt. Panic throbbed beneath my ribs, slow, suffocating. Everything I had built, my independence, my sanctuary, teetered on the edge because of a sister who once promised she'd always protect me. I picked up my phone, thumb hovering over Darlene's contact. One call, one confrontation, but I paused. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't hurt feelings or jealousy. This was a calculated dismantling. And if I misstepped now, it wouldn't just be my pride that shattered. It would be everything. I set the phone down, breathing in the thick, stale air of the office. My next move wouldn't be fueled by anger. It would be deliberate, precise. Because if this was war, I wasn't going to lose by playing fair. The clock on the office wall ticked louder than usual, filling the empty space around me. The café had closed hours ago, the last customer's footprints long dried into the floor. I sat hunched over a mountain of paperwork, the steady ache between my shoulders deepening with every passing minute. The smell of old coffee and printer ink clung to the air, a familiar, unwelcome comfort. I wasn't looking for trouble. I was looking for reassurance. Something tangible to prove that the ground under me hadn't shifted completely. My fingers flipped through vendor contracts, invoices, receipts. Everything should have been straightforward, clean, easy to tie up, but it wasn't. Buried near the bottom of a stack, a loan document caught my eye, one I didn't remember authorizing. My breath snagged. I scanned the signature at the bottom. It looked like mine at first glance, but the tilt was wrong, the flow too practiced. My name, written by someone else's hand, Darlene's. The walls of the office seemed to inch closer as the realization seeped in. This wasn't just gossip anymore. This wasn't bruised feelings or manipulation whispered in dim corners. This was criminal. A fresh wave of nausea rolled over me, sending the world tilting sideways. I grabbed the edge of the desk, breathing through my nose, willing my heart to slow down. I was alone, completely and utterly alone. The people I trusted, family, had turned me into a mark. The tears came quietly, slipping down my cheeks without permission. Not the heaving sobs of heartbreak, but the silent, exhausted tears of someone who had nothing left to give. I wiped them away before anyone could see, even though no one was coming. The next morning, I found Kenny on my doorstep, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His hair was a mess, his hoodie soaked from the drizzle outside. He shuffled from foot to foot, not meeting my eyes. "I didn't know what else to do," he mumbled, stepping into the kitchen when I moved aside. We didn't sit. There was no need for small talk. "Darlene's been planning this," he said, voice cracking. "She's been talking to the cousins, the uncles, telling them we need to remind you where you come from." I didn't respond. The words hung heavy between us. "It wasn't supposed to get this far," he added, quieter now, like he couldn't bear to hear himself. "I thought if I kept quiet, it would blow over." I leaned against the counter, gripping its cool edge. It wasn't just Darlene. It was all of them. An entire web of loyalty, guilt, and old debts I had foolishly thought had faded with time. They were circling, tightening, and I was alone in the center. Later, after Kenny left, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, staring up at the old family photo that still clung to the refrigerator door. The colors had faded, the edges curled from years of humidity, but there we were, young, smiling, arms slung around each other like promises that would never break. I knew now. The next time I faced them, I wouldn't be bringing memories. I wouldn't be bringing apologies. I would be bringing evidence. The hall smelled faintly of damp carpet and too sweet punch, the kind of place rented by the hour for birthday parties no one remembered. It was tucked at the edge of Seattle, away from anything that mattered, a fitting stage for what was about to unfold. I walked in late on purpose, hoping to minimize the eyes that would follow me, but they still found me, half-hearted smiles, nods stiff with expectation. The banner above the stage read, "Celebrating our shared legacy," in peeling gold letters. I barely kept my face neutral. Darlene had planned the whole thing. She stood near the podium, beaming like the queen of some crumbling kingdom. I could see the manila folders on the side table, thick and ominous. Every detail screamed ambush. When Kenny stepped up to the microphone, my chest tightened. He cleared his throat twice, his hands trembling as he held a single sheet of paper. For a split second, our eyes met, his filled with something like apology. But it was too late. "I just want to say," he started, voice cracking, "that I officially recognize Darlene's role in everything Travis built." A murmur swept the room. I stood frozen as Kenny unfolded a document, reading the words he'd been handed like a prisoner reciting his own sentence. The agreement was clear. He acknowledged Darlene as a rightful co-owner of my business. The air around me thickened. Faces blurred together, expectation radiating off them in suffocating waves. They waited for me to nod, to smile, to validate the betrayal playing out under rented chandeliers. I couldn't move. It felt like sinking into concrete. Every instinct screamed to run, to scream, but all I managed was to breathe. Barely. Then Darlene took the stage, her arms wide as if she were welcoming a prodigal child home. "Today," she said, voice rich with false warmth, "we reclaim what belongs to all of us. Not mine, ours." The applause was tepid, unsure, but she didn't seem to notice. She went on, declaring that moving forward, all business decisions would be made by a family council, a group she conveniently already controlled. I heard every word but processed none of them. It was as if someone had replaced my blood with static, buzzing under my skin. In the blur of faces, I caught glimpses of pity, discomfort, satisfaction. Surreal detachment washed over me, leaving a hollow space where anger should have been. But beneath that numbness, something began to shift. A quiet, deliberate rage. I smiled then, a tight, polite thing that didn't reach my eyes, and clapped softly, matching the hollow rhythm around me. Darlene's gaze found mine across the room. She smiled wider, victorious, and that was when I made a promise to myself. No more hesitations, no more compromise. This would be the last time Darlene wrote the story of who I was. The cafe smelled like rain and burnt toast, the morning crowd thinner than usual. I moved behind the counter mechanically, filling orders, smiling where expected, but every glance felt heavier, loaded. Conversations dropped when I passed. Whispers rose the second I turned away. I caught snippets. My name, the word sellout, quiet disgust lacing their voices. The rumors had grown teeth. According to the city now, I was selling out to faceless corporations, abandoning the very people who had built me. I didn't need to guess who had fed them that lie. By noon, it was worse. News articles started popping up online, anonymous sources confirming my alleged betrayal. Blog posts dissected my supposed greed, my disregard for tradition. The comments were a flood of anger, disappointment, and betrayal from people who had never even spoken to me. Darlene hadn't just poisoned my family, she was poisoning my city. That night, I sat alone in my office, the blue glow of the laptop screen casting hollow shadows. I scrolled through the headlines, each one another crack forming along the life I had built. One article was shared by an old high school friend, another by a customer who used to bring me fresh flowers for the counter. I didn't cry the way I thought I would. No sobs, no heaving breaths. Just a silent, body-racking grief, the kind that hollows you out from the inside. The betrayal wasn't loud. It was insidious, quiet as the night, steady as the tide pulling me under. The knock at the front door startled me. Through the glass, a courier stood, rain dripping from the brim of his cap. I signed without thinking, hands numb, and tore the envelope open on the spot. A lawsuit, filed by Darlene, demanding half ownership of my café. The weight of the paper in my hands was crushing, but something inside me shifted. The fear that had paralyzed me for weeks cracked, split down the center. In its place, something new stirred. Not rage, not grief, resolve. I slid into my car and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Breathing through the roar in my ears, I pressed my forehead against the cool window, letting the rain vibrate through the glass and into my skin. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about surviving. I was thinking about winning. If it's a war she wants, I whispered to myself, voice steady despite the storm outside, it's a war she'll get. I pulled away from the curb, the city lights bending into long streaks across the windshield, blurring into the kind of future I was ready to fight for. The house was silent except for the soft shuffle of papers and the ticking clock on the wall. My home office looked like a war room. Stacks of legal documents, printed emails, contracts highlighted in angry red ink. I sat at the desk, a cup of untouched coffee cooling beside me, methodically building a timeline of every betrayal, every blow Darlene had landed when I wasn't looking. I had to be ready. The court battle wasn't just about money anymore. It was about erasing the lies that had slowly poisoned every corner of my life. The email came after midnight, no subject line, just an attachment and one line of text. Settle before you regret it. I opened it, and the blood drained from my face. It was a list. Detailed accounts of incidents from our childhood. Things I had buried deep. Things Darlene knew would rip old wounds wide open if made public. She framed it as protecting the family image, but I knew exactly what it was. Blackmail, wrapped in sentimentality. A memory slammed into me without warning. Me at 15, shielding Darlene from a drunken boyfriend's rage, taking the blows she was too afraid to stand against. I remembered the way she clung to me afterward, sobbing, swearing she would always have my back. Now she dangled my pain like a weapon, ready to cut me down with it. I closed the laptop and sat back, feeling the air thicken around me. The betrayal was total, crystalline in its cruelty. And yet, beneath the devastation, something inside me crystallized too. Cold, sharp, unbreakable. The text from Kenny came just before dawn. Need to talk. Urgent. We met at the deserted pier, the mist curling around the wooden beams like restless spirits. Kenny stood there, shoulders hunched, hands jammed deep into his jacket pockets. When he saw me, his face crumpled. "I'm sorry," he said without preamble. His voice cracked like something fragile and broken. "I didn't know how bad it got. I thought she just wanted fairness." He pulled out his phone, fumbling through messages, showing me thread after thread of Darlene feeding him lies about me, planting seeds of resentment, painting me as selfish, arrogant, abandoning family for pride. Years of manipulation, all laid bare in trembling hands. I took it all in silently, my heart heavy but no longer surprised. Kenny looked at me then, his eyes pleading for something he couldn't name. Forgiveness, maybe. Redemption. "I'm sorry," he said again. "I was stupid. I see it now." I nodded once. Quiet, final. I didn't make promises. I didn't offer comfort, because I understood now. This wasn't about fixing what had broken. It was about surviving what couldn't be repaired. As the mist thickened around us, I slipped Kenny's signed confession into my coat pocket. It wasn't enough to win yet, but it was a start. I walked to the edge of the pier, feeling the wooden planks give slightly beneath my boots. Seattle's skyline blurred against the early dawn, jagged and distant. In my pocket, the paper felt heavier than it should have. In my chest, something lighter stirred for the first time in weeks. The endgame wasn't just coming. It had finally begun. The storm rolled in just before sunrise, thick clouds pressing low over Seattle's skyline. Thunder rumbled in the distance, a slow, crawling growl that seemed to vibrate through the walls of my house. I sat at the dining room table, evidence spread before me like a battle map. Printouts of emails, screenshots of text messages, financial records carefully organized into neat, damning piles. The betrayal had roots deeper and more tangled than even I had guessed. Years of manipulation orchestrated not just to humiliate me, but to hollow me out entirely. I installed hidden cameras at the café, backups to the backups already tucked safely away. I dug through old email archives, pulling receipts, contracts, anything that could nail Darlene's lies to the wall. Each piece fit perfectly into the timeline I had built, like a puzzle designed by cruelty itself. Later that afternoon, I met Kenny at a small coffee shop tucked between two bookshops downtown. He looked smaller somehow, swallowed by guilt he couldn't escape. He slid into the booth across from me without meeting my eyes. Without a word, he pulled out his phone and handed it over. Months of messages. Darlene's threats, her coercion, her explicit orders to sabotage my business, to turn friends against me, to sow doubt wherever she could. Reading them felt like being scraped raw from the inside out. Kenny's shoulders shook. "I'm sorry," he said, barely a whisper. "I didn't know how far she would go. I didn't know it would cost this much." I nodded, acknowledging but not absolving. Some debts could never be paid. When I asked if he would testify, his face crumpled further. "I can't," he said. "They'd never forgive me." A familiar sadness washed over me. Not anger, not anymore. Just the bone-deep recognition that some people would stay trapped forever. I left the cafe that night carrying everything I needed. Not hope, not love, but proof. I sat with my lawyer for hours, finalizing documents that would protect what little I had left. No more appeals to blood or loyalty, only cold, meticulous lines of defense, drawn in black ink on white paper. When I returned to the cafe, it was nearly midnight. The windows reflected nothing but my own tired face. I walked through the empty shop, turning off lights, inhaling the bittersweet scent of coffee and something older, the memory of what this place had once meant to me. At the door, I hesitated, fingers brushing over the lock. Tomorrow would be the end of something, maybe everything. I turned the key slowly, sealing the door, sealing the past. One raindrop hit the glass just as I turned away, vanishing into the flood outside. Tomorrow, we end this. The rain was steady, a muted percussion against the windows of the lawyer's office. I sat across from him, hands folded neatly in my lap, watching as he slid the final stack of papers toward me. My name printed bold at the bottom, waiting. I picked up the pen, feeling the slightest tremor in my fingers. It wasn't fear anymore. It was the release of something that had clung to my bones for too long. With one signature, everything changed. The business was no longer just mine. It was protected, locked away in a trust no one could touch. Not Darlene, not Kenny, not anyone who claimed ownership through bloodlines and old grudges. "You understand," the lawyer said gently. "If they try to contest this, they forfeit any claim to the family inheritance." I nodded, the words falling over me like a balm. I felt lighter, yes, but also heavier somehow, as if every choice carried two weights, freedom and the cost it demanded. Outside, the rain blurred the city into a watercolor painting, familiar streets made new by the haze. I sat in my car for a long time after leaving the office, watching the droplets race down the windshield, feeling the strange mix of relief and loneliness settle in my chest. Somewhere deep inside, a memory stirred. Two little girls under a blanket fort, whispering dreams into the dark. I smiled sadly. We had promised to protect each other once. I opened my phone and composed a short email, my fingers moving without hesitation. To Darlene, Kenny. Subject, final notice. No more discussions. No more negotiations. Your decisions have shaped your futures. This is where our paths divide. I hit send, the click of the button quieter than I expected. Final. A week later, I reopened the cafe under soft gray skies. The sign above the door gleamed a little brighter after the fresh paint. Loyal customers trickled back in, a few bringing flowers, others offering nothing more than a warm smile. It was enough. The walls felt different now, not just patched but rebuilt. Stronger. Mine. I sat at my favorite corner table one evening after closing, a cup of coffee warming my palms. The world felt smaller somehow, quieter, but in a way that left room for something new. Healing isn't a straight path. It loops, it falters, it stings when you least expect it. But sitting there, breathing in the rich scent of coffee and rain, I realized something simple and profound. I had finally chosen myself. I smiled quietly into the cup, whispering words only I needed to hear. Sometimes survival looks like walking away and never looking back. Life has a way of teaching us that not all battles are loud. Some are fought in silence, through the choices we make to protect our peace. I used to believe loyalty meant standing still, enduring, sacrificing until there was nothing left. But sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away, choosing yourself over the chains of obligation masked as love. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever faced the pain of letting go to save yourself, remember, healing is not betrayal. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It's survival, and it's strength. I would love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to walk away from something that once defined you? Leave a comment below. If you felt a connection to this story, type 1 inch in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. And if you didn't connect with it, that's okay too. Share your perspective. I truly want to hear it. If you enjoyed this story and want more heartfelt journeys like this, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world and helps keep these stories alive for everyone who needs to hear them. Thank you for being here. See you in the next story.